and we're talking about clay first, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Hi everyone. Welcome to this episode of Screech Bomb Commentaries. My name is David Bradman Fabulous Lark. My co-host is.
Callum, the good Dr. Young.
We're bringing you now the top cut of the Keyforge Premier League. The group stages are over. Those who qualified have qualified. Those who did not qualify have unfortunately gone home in disgrace. And this is the first match that we're going to be commentating of this, which is very exciting for us. Callum, do you want to tell me which players we've got today?
Yeah, we are looking at Team SAS's most prominent member currently, Z, who qualified from the top 10 of the Vault Tour leaderboard, so practiced results at high level, versus Ugluk from Team Sanctimonious. Team Sanctimonious being the sort of all-sprawling, all-encompassing internet Keyforge people who qualified through the adaptive. And here we're going to start looking at Z's deck that they've chosen today.
So Z's deck is Clay of Ratborn. Now,
yes.
I think the thing that everyone's eyes will be drawn to here is that there is not one, but two Quixel Stones.
Double Quixel Stone.
Oh no.
So we can, I think, safely assume that is going to feature heavily in this deck's plan.
Yeah, that means you can play a Quixel Stone, and if you wanted to play Tachyon Pulse and get rid of all their artifacts, you could play another Quixel Stone.
Yeah, and you also have the choice to turn it off later if it's not working out for you, which is going to be interesting and adaptive because you need to be good at judging whether that's the case or not.
Also, if someone has, kind of like a Reclaimed by Nature or something, you can purge one of your Quixel Stones and then just play another one.
Double Quixel Stone.
As you may hear from my voice, I am appalled. Quixel Stone is one of my second least favorite card after Heart of the Forest, and two of them in one deck is despicable.
So I think it's going to work quite well as a Quixel Stone deck, which is presumably why they brought it. It's got a lot of pips, a lot of efficiency when it's not playing creatures. So be able to draw through, play a lot of actions with pips on, whilst at the same time preventing your opponent from playing creatures. You've got a Val Jericho to just sort of whack down as your one creature to increase the amount of actions you can play.
Yep, you've got the encounter suit to put on that as well and stop anyone being able to remove that very easily.
Yeah, so other than that, it's got a decent set of logos and star alliance, and then some Worlds Collide Shadows, which as ever is reasonable. It's got some good tools in it that I think are useful. Time or Eclipse, shuffle creatures back in, Spike Trap, Hidden Stash, Inky Gloom.
Yeah.
But nothing sort of too crazy.
One thing that I just think might be a bit risky in this deck is the two Wild Wormholes. Because with a Quixel Stone deck, what you often want to do is have only like one or two creatures down and stop the other person playing any creatures. Playing Wild Wormhole, you could accidentally play more creatures than you want. So it's going to be interesting to see whether Z holds the Wild Wormholes or discards them, or throws caution to the wind and just plays them anyway.
It's a personal choice. I am anti-wormhole normally. I think you're more pro-wormhole than I am.
I'm more pro-wormhole, yeah. I'm anti-Lethalogica, pro-wormhole, whereas I think you're pro-Lethalogica, anti-wormhole.
I'm not sure what that says about us as people, and I don't want to investigate that right now.
It's fine. We'll have a civil war at some point, I'm sure.
Yeah. Good Quixel Stone deck. I think it's chances to
it's like you say, I think the thing we're going to see here is just the speed, allowing Z to just ream through his deck, playing out those pips. The one thing that we see as a concern is the lack of amber control. Only 5.3 is not much, with the amber control coming from a universal key lock, which affects you as much as your opponent, and a First Officer Frayne and Dusk Runner are the other two big ones, which again are kind of creature-based things. So it's hard because you both don't want to play creatures, but have to play creatures to do your Ember control.
You got to think they're trying to prevent the opponent from generating Ember with the stones.
Precisely. So we'll now look at the opponent's deck, which is Vivian M. Bitstrab the Fifth, and that's played by Ugluk, I believe.
And I will confess, I have a little bit more insight into this deck because in qualifying through the Adaptive Qualifier, Ugluk beat me playing with this deck. So I have played it and seen it in action.
So you've been burned before?
I have, indeed. It was best of three. I was outplayed during the bidding process, basically. But the deck is deceptively fast. Mars Sanctum Shadows aren't traditionally your rush houses, but the deck it earns that 25 expected ember. You've got stuff like furtive investors, free markets, rigged lottery for a big burst, triple Mars first for a lot of swift reaping. So it can generate ember pretty damn quickly.
No, definitely. I think that's the other thing that I think is very worth noticing, especially in this Quixelstone matchup, is only 13 creatures, which is less than the Quixelstone deck has. I think this is probably a very tactical choice by Ugluk and a very astute one because of that.
A good counter, knowing there is the risk of the double Quixelstone.
I think the thing is, though, that it is going to mean that the Sanctum is probably going to be much less useful than otherwise. A lot of the Ember control is based on being able to play creatures when often you might not be able to. You might not be able to play your Orbades, you might not be able to play your Gatekeeper, you might not be able to play your Maruk, and if you do, there's no guarantee you'll have enough things to fight and do damage to. And I can't see a Prince Derek the Unifier being able to go off this game.
I'd be very surprised. What might shine in a way that doesn't usually is Gromid.
Gromid, yeah. Now this is a much maligned Mars card.
Correctly so, mostly.
Yeah, it's one of these creatures that has a huge downside for relatively little little benefit, which is 10 power, which is nice. And after an enemy creature destroyed fighting Gromit, your opponent loses one. So basically a Grok at 10 power, but you cannot play creatures when Gromit is on the board.
It's not even Grok. Grok is just fight, lose one.
That's true, yeah, it's worse than Grok.
But if you can't play creatures anyway, then downside doesn't matter.
Yeah, and if you're sitting, Gromit could want to sit on the board, biff anything that comes in, lose the opponent Ember.
You can use it in this deck anyway because you've got the triple Mars first, so you can play it, use it twice, they get it killed.
Yep. You also got the key abduction to get it back to hand if you've kind of grown tired of it and it's outlived its usefulness.
Yep.
And also the exterminate, which you've got to think that you're probably going to have quite a few creatures that are smaller than a 10 power Mars creature there.
Potentially so. We'll see if that shines through or if he just discards it like normal. One final thing, I think, is the key abduction.
Yes.
Potential to go off in this deck is going to be harder with the Kixel Stones, but with the triple Mars first and a decent number of Mars creatures, you can, I think, hit that key abduction semi-reliably.
Yeah. One last thing I think worth commenting on is the Shadows, which is a very irritating Shadows set, as is as very much the case in most Kota and AOA. You know, you've got the 2 Nerve Blasts, you've got the Miasma, you've got Furtive Investors and Dust Chronicles, which both can, really kind of get you ahead. Another thing worth noting is the rigged lottery, which I believe, as he's not playing with any shadows, so is guaranteed to just give.
They are playing with shadows.
They are playing with shadows.
They are, yes.
Okay, so a bit of a risky one with rigged lottery.
It's Worlds Collide Shadow, so we talked about the Logos and the Star Knights more, but yes, there is the potential for a very risky lottery. Not as rigged as you would like it to be.
No, not quite. Also, one of my personal favourite cards, Merkins, could be taken to the field, which can steal a card in your opponent's archives, and with some things like, say, a Val Jericho running around, you could be getting some spicy Merkins plays off of that.
Yes, or if you just, there are several sort of key targets that you could hit just off the top of the deck.
Yeah, like a Tachyon Pulse would be a beautiful one.
Or a Quixelstone.
Yeah, or a Quixelstone. Yeah, it could be problematic.
Okay. So, who do you think is going to win? What's your prediction?
My prediction is that Ugluk is going to take this. I think the first game is heavily in favor of Vivian. It really isn't affected by the Quixelstone shenanigans, and should be able to kind of deal with that quite well. The adaptive, I think, is going to be interesting. It's kind of, they're both very, I think, very difficult decks to play, especially with the Quixelstone affecting it. But my pick would be Ugluk, I'd say.
I think I'd agree with you there. I think it's got the tools to generate Ember off the board, so without relying on creatures, and I think that's what you want against the Quixelstone deck. All right, let's see how it goes.
So I think we'll move on to the game now. See you in a second. Okay, and welcome to the game. Once again, we have Z playing what deck was it again, Callum?
Clay of Ratborn.
And we have Ugluk 4242 playing
Vivian M. Bitgrab the 5th.
So Ugluk is on the top of your screen, Z is on the bottom. and let's begin the game. Fortunately, this time we've got it from the start. We're not jumping in a few turns in, so we can see exactly what's going to happen.
Thanks again to Jupiter for recording this and letting us do this for some reason.
Exactly. We very much appreciate it. We hope that you appreciate it too. Okay, let's look at these opening hands. Ooh, that's a Quixel Stone in the opening hand for Z. That's an immediate mulligan from Ugluk there.
Yeah, I think you want to get rid of the Gatekeeper. You don't want that
No,
immediately.
you definitely don't.
Kind of want some better stuff. But they have mulliganed into no creatures, which I get. Oh no, one creature. Sorry.
2 creatures got the Orbade and
Two
the
creatures.
Limindra.
I apologize. My thing's a bit fuzzy
And
here. Just
uses their first turn to discard Limindra, interestingly.
clearly, clearly thinking about the Kixel Stone.
Yes, one can only assume. So gonna get Melina down with the Chan's Blaster. And obviously the Quixel Stone. So Ugluk can play a maximum of 2 creatures at the moment. You can, with the Quixel Stone, you can play 1 more than your opponent has on board. Once you have more creatures than your opponent, you can no longer play any more creatures. So it gets the Orbade the Grim down, captures 2 Ember.
I think worth playing. Get some Ember away from your opponent.
Now we see he does play the Wild Wormhole and gets the Stealth mode and discards the Hapsis.
And that's particularly brutal stealth mode for Ugluk's deck. A lot of actions, so a pretty limited Sanctum turn.
Yeah, but it still has to discard Shield of Justice, unfortunately. But he's getting to reap with that Orbade the Grim, getting himself Ember, and also getting rid of the Ember that could be returning to Z if he can get rid of that Orbade. So we see a Thorium Plasma. Unfortunately, nowhere to move the Orbade, so just going to be an Ember for Z.
But we're seeing the Kixel Stone stuff in action, right?
We
so
are.
They're just going to call Logos, play several actions with pips on an archive a card.
And plays the Twin Bottom Mission, interestingly, so putting some damage onto Orbade the Grim. And we see a fast turn here from Ugluk, uses the Nerve Blast to kill the Melina, stealing an Ember, and plays the Furtive Investments just to get the single Ember and discards the Throwing Stars.
So it's kind of just already turning into an action race, right?
Yeah. So we're just seeing just discarding 3 Shadows creatures there and playing no safety numbers just for the Ember. We get a Shadow Stone from Ugluk, reaping with the Orbade to get rid of that final bit of Ember, and playing the Blinding Light for the Ember, and then just playing the Golden Aura to heal up the Orbade and get that 1 damage off of it.
And they're on check.
They are. We are seeing a big Mars hand from Ugluk here, but with no creatures to kind of benefit from it. So you've got stuff like your Mars First, which you'd ideally want to play with a creature down. Unfortunately, there's no creature too ready with that card.
Z, I think here, going to be carefully considering the Tachyon Pulse.
He would be. I think you've got the second Quixel Stone coming around in. I think we can see that there is 16 cards remaining in Z's deck. I think I can see. So he's drawn through half his deck. He knows that he's likely going to be getting the other Quixel Stone, but he gets the Pestering Blow instead. Enrages the Orbade and gets himself an Ember, puts himself on 5. It's not quite on check, unfortunately. We are going to see the Mars turn from Ugluk and also the Forge. So I think just going to be playing and destroys the Orbade the Grim, interestingly.
Yeah, I buy that.
Yeah.
Limits their ability to play creatures. You're just going to go out and play a bunch more actions.
Yeah, and allows Ugluk to play a different creature on his turn as well, which, with the Gatekeeper in hand, potentially could be very good for him down the line. So we're seeing a Logos turn, just archiving. Did you catch what was archived there, Callum?
It was something Shadows. I think it was an Oubliette.
Okay.
No, that's on the other side. It was something Shadows.
Okay, so and discard Sanitation Engineer and your Goggle just wants them out.
Now we have the Val Jericho with the Encounter Suit.
So yeah, I think we're gonna get Shadows here. Interesting. I was expecting him to play the little Nif and purge that there with the Oubliette, to be honest. Just so he can get through his deck quicker. I don't think you're going to be playing little Nif very often. That's what I think I would personally done.
And things looking a bit rough here for Z because they can choose to stop the check with the Frame.
They do not have the Val Jericho. So I think...
Can't outplay it. It's going for the Val Jericho instead.
But may play the Tachyon Pulse to still play the Frame.
Maybe.
You are getting rid of the Memory Chip as well, which is a useful artifact, but you're very likely to be drawing another Quixel Stone soon. There's only 11 cards remaining in the deck, and you're likely to play the full card, but does discard the Tachyon Blossom, draws the Quixelstone. And Ugluk already has a second key. Breakneck Keyforge here.
Turn 6,
Mhm.
Forge Key 2.
Puts down the Mother Gun. Now, it's going to be interesting here whether he plays these Mars creatures to allow Z to play more creatures, or if he is just going to discard them and make it easier for him to be able to play stuff like the Gatekeeper. He is discarding them. So I think relying on the Gatekeeper to be able to kind of capture Ember for... Oh, no, plays the Collector Worm. I apologise.
I think you want the Collector Worm down so you can try and get rid of the Val Jericho. And one creature doesn't stop you playing the Gatekeeper.
Yeah, and I think the Collector Worm can actually get rid of the Val Jericho, because I think the damage from the fight will get rid of the ward, and then the effect of the archiving will still work. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that's how it would work.
So Ugluk at the moment comfortably winning the Kixelstone race.
Plays the Igor.
Just got to go looking for answers, I think.
Yeah, and stuns the Collector Worm. Strong play. Stopping, and then puts down the second Quixelstone. Presumably just the Ember. Now, yeah, 8 Ember here. So I think we're going to see the Gatekeeper come down, and maybe the Barrister Joya with it. Oh no, goes for Shadows. I guess to play, with the Miasma in hand, that makes sense.
Yeah, can just set up an even bigger Gatekeeper.
Yep, and getting really close to that being on check with 5 Ember. Oh, we see the free markets as well. We could see Ugluk
come
just
back around,
closing this out at this point.
Drop the Gatekeeper, hit the free markets.
Yeah.
This is what he talked about. The deck generates Ember very quickly.
Yeah, the only thing with that would be that wouldn't the game. He would, because the Keylock could still come down, just edging over check with that. Because I think he would get to 8 Ember and he would need 9 with the Keylock in play.
But still, they're in a commanding position, 2 keys up.
Also, at that, oh no, because it'd be interesting. No, so Z's going Star Alliance here. It'd be interesting if he played the Keylock, then what Ugluk could do would be just not play the Gatekeeper, allow Z to forge, destroying the Keylock, and then putting himself on check with the Keylock gone and a big part of their Ember control gone.
I don't think they're going to play that.
I'd be surprised if they did, but it's something worth considering.
What do you think's going through Z's mind at this point? How do you catch up?
I mean, it's hard for me to say, because personally I would never play a Quixelstone deck because I have morals. But
that's harsh.
No, I joke. Quixelstone is a legitimate thing to play. It's just not my style of Keyforge. But we do see Ugluk playing the Sanctum turn, discarding a lot of cards here, playing the Gatekeeper for that big capture, and the free markets to gain 4 Ember.
And I think that might be it.
Oh yes, because of course free markets, it's cards, not just creatures. I do apologize. So he is. I think he's just won it here. I don't think.
Yeah, with the Spike Trap coming down, that adds the 3rd house, so sets it up for a comfortable 4.
Yeah, let me just have a look. Captain Val Jericho, if you put the... No, concedes, yeah. I think if you get the Dusk Runner or the Keylock, you can't get both, and that'd be the only way. But yeah, very fast game there. Keyforce played at a ripping pace, but also I think Ugluk got in a commanding position early on and just wasn't affected by the Quixelstone at all.
Yeah, and the deck, I think, counters the Quixelstone stuff very well. It's mostly actions. 21 actions in a deck.
Yeah.
15 of them having pips, and several of the ones that don't have pips also get you a good chunk of Ember, like Free Markets and Nerve Blast.
It's just like, it's a fantastic play from Ugluk there. Just discarding discarding creatures just like without any fear. When you went to play creatures, went to destroy creatures, like getting rid of Obey the Grim when he did. It's a very strong play.
Has played against the Quixelstone decks before. For sure. So we'll see if Z can repeat the performance of Vivian M. Bitdrap. And takes to game 3.
I think there's a strong chance he will. I think because the decks kind of have a similar modus operandi in terms of being very creature light, it's not going to be too far detached from the style of play that he's playing with his own deck. But similarly, that means that Ugluk is probably going to have quite an easy time playing Z's deck.
And also, I think if you're Z, you know how to beat a Quixelstone deck because you presumably will have lost games playing this deck, and you will know what has lost you those games.
Exactly, yes. So I think, yeah, we're
Right.
seeing rematching just so we can get the right person going first here.
I've got to say, Keyforge played at the speed it should be played at. As ever, love me some fast Keyforge.
If it doesn't go past turn 10, it's not a real game. That's my opinion. They set a time limit of 35 minutes, and it's rude not to use all of that time, is my opinion.
Outrageous. 10 minutes up. 10 minutes or bust.
All right, do you want to have that as a rule when we play, Callum? If you don't win by 10 minutes, I get the win. Is that fair?
You say that like that's not how the games go down normally. Like,
okay.
I've normally won or lost within 10 minutes.
We have some opening hands here. We have a mulligan from Ugluk throws away the Quixelstone. Interesting. And from Z, a bit of a mixed hand here. You're not going to want to see the Prince Derek. Collector Worm, maybe good to get early. And the Shadows, nothing really to write home about. He has kept it there.
Well, you can collect a Worm Mars first, whatever sort of comes down.
So we see the Navigator Alley comes out first. So look at the top 3 cards of the deck and rearrange them in any order, presumably putting the more favourable cards at the top for him.
Got some good cycling from Ugluk.
And we're going to see, the Collector Worm with the Mars first to put that Navigator Alley in prison. No, lots of shadows here.
Could be a problem though if they don't generate any Ember. Sometimes getting all of your steely cards quite early on.
That's very true. It seems unlikely that Ugluk will. I mean, he can play down some logos by the looks of it. Gets a stealth mode in hand. And places Jargoggle and the Sanitation Engineer. So he had no Ember to steal, so his Nerve Blast can't even do damage right now because there's nothing to steal. Dust Chronicles will allow him to archive a card, but not amazing.
I mean, you could take the Shadow's turn, archive the Prince Derek.
Yeah.
Hoping it's going to come down the next turn.
I'd almost be tempted to archive a Nerve Blast, to be honest. It can be much more useful later.
Potentially just hold one or both of them.
Yeah. And he does, yeah. So we see a Merkins here and keeping them both Nerve Blasts. So things that we've got to assume that Starlight's being played by Ugluk. He's going to put a stealth mode down. No, plays Logos.
3 Logos creatures on the board. Twin Bolt the little Nif.
Yeah.
Dip something out of your hand with the Sanitation Engineer.
To see what was under the Igor. Oh no, he's going to reap the Igor. And he discards Chimera Eclipse. Makes sense. Not going to be playing a Shadow's turn anytime soon. And yeah, we see the Quixelstone in hand. Do you think he plays the Quixelstone here, Callum?
It would obviously depend on what happens in the immediate turn. You're going to look at these creatures and go, okay, several of these might die imminently.
Seeing the Merkins here. Hidden Stash. Not the best thing you're going to see off of Merkins today. I'm going to be very disappointed with that. But does play the Nerve Blast to take out first the Igor, then the Jargoggle. Might have been worth playing the Nerve Blast first and then Merkinsing whatever they put under the Jargoggle.
Might have been a good play.
Now, are we going to see we see the stealth mode, but are we going to see the Quixelstone here?
I could
discards the Quixelstone,
but no, doesn't fancy it.
Yep. Navigator Alley's back down. And we're going to see presumably a Commander Chan and a First Officer Brain.
I suppose with the collector
on the Sanitation Engineer, which has the Hazardous, which is a good one to put it on.
With the collector worm on the board, I think you might not want to limit the amount of creatures because that's one of the better ones. I think you kind of want to get rid of that before you can Quixelstone.
Yeah, and you've not really got a great way of dealing with it at the moment either. No real way to get rid of it. So I think you're correct there. We're going to see Mars from Z here. So usually something is going to get put in jail by the collector worm. We have an Orbital Bombardment. Going to be able to get a total of 4... Oh, discards the Orbital Bombardment. Interesting.
Because it's stealth mode.
Stealth mode, of course, yes.
Always a sneaky card that is easily missed on DCO sometimes.
You can see a potential for a big free markets here, though. We've got 1, 2, 3, 4 non-sanctum houses out. It's going to be a lot of Ember for Z. But we see the Logos turn. Plays the Wild Wormhole to play an Encounter Suit. Puts it on the first officer fray, just guaranteeing further Ember control to be able to capture a bit. Very strong play. Discards a Tachyon Pulse. Makes sense. He's not playing the Quixel Stone. He doesn't want to get rid of that memory chip, and he's probably not that fussed about a Mother Gun.
And you want to keep your memory chip.
Yep. Twin Bottle Mission just to get rid of the Merkins, put a bit of damage on the Fixed Finger.
Go to check at 6, which is unfortunate given the Gatekeeper, did I imagine?
No, that's Maruk the Marked, not the Gatekeeper. So, but he does have the Gatekeeper in Archive, which he pulled up. It also gives Ugluk back some creatures by picking up his Archive there.
Big hit with the free markets.
Yeah, that's 3 Ember. But yes, Gatekeeper's still probably going to see Ugluk Forge here because at 6 Ember rather than 7, which is necessary to trigger the Gatekeeper. You're going to see a Blinding Light here. You've got to assume he's going to go... would go for Star Alliance or Logo. So which would you choose, Callum?
I go for Star Alliance there, I think. The Frayne is going to be hard to kill and will be a continual problem.
It will be a continual annoyance. That's very true. Okay.
A few decent options for Ugluk here.
So it's an interesting change here where the Quixel Stone has not been put into play and has been actively discarded by Ugluk. What do you think is the reason for that, Callum?
It wasn't the best situation to play it. It could also just be a practice thing, right? That if you don't play Quixel Stone decks very often, you're going to be less comfortable doing it. So you think you're more likely to mess up. But I think, yeah, mostly the first reason, just that they had a couple of good creatures they wanted to get on the board, and they didn't want to limit it to just the 2 that were there, especially when one of your opponents is the Collector Worm.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
That you could continually use to great effect. Yeah. You want to try and set up a favorable board position before playing the Quixel Stone.
No, definitely. So we've got the Chan's Blaster here. You've got to see, we'll use the Hapsis or the Engineer. I've got to assume the Hapsis, maybe just get rid of, say, Prince Derek.
Yeah, fight and draw.
Fight, draw, get a creature off the board, stop Z reaping for as much.
He's going to instead reap with a Sanitation Engineer and just cycle the hand. Also pretty good.
So yeah, and what's he discard with that? Discards the other Hapsis, which makes sense. You maybe not wanting to take Logos turns anytime soon. Much more likely to be taking a Star Alliance turn.
Yeah, and we're starting to see some of the sort of more traditional Worlds Collide Star Alliance with a lot of creatures that will reap on the board and provide you with a lot of efficiency. We'll have a lot of effects like capture an Ember, look at the top 3 cards, use another creature.
Yeah, so I think this is
a sort of board that needs dealing with if you're going to be...
Very much does. I think it's hard for Z to deal with it though, almost, because, you know, looking at his hand, he's got a Mars first, but only 2 Mars creatures on the board. He's got a Shield of Justice with only 3 Sanctum creatures, and then 4 Shadows cards. And it's whether, do you want to play the Shadows cards to get them out of your hand? Maybe you want to save those until Ugluk's about to forge, because you can play the Miasma, or he does play the Mars. So presumably you're going to go for maybe try and take 2 things with the Collector Worm, using the Mars first.
That is if you can manage to collect 2 things.
I mean, he definitely... Oh no, I don't think you can. No, you could get... No, everything is... Everything is... Would you go over 7 power in total?
But sacrifices the Potion of Invulnerability.
Yes, okay. So yeah, gets the...
to his heart's content.
Frayne and indeed the Jericho. And he also gets that encounter suit off the Frayne, which he's got to be happy about.
Yeah. Goes up to 5 Ember.
So I think we're still going to see a Star Alliance turn here from...
I'm more tempted by the Quixel Stone now, but I don't think it's a certainty that we're going to see it come down.
No, I think with the Collector Worm still out, you can just kind of eat away at his board. I mean, I suppose you've got the Stunner, so you can stun the Collector Worm, which is probably what I do. But... And this is difficult for me because I would just, like I said, Quixel Stone is not the kind of deck I play. So strategically for me, it's hard to kind of judge the strategy of playing Quixel Stone.
I'd be tempted by it here because with the exception of the Quixel Stone, with the exception of the Collector Worm, this is not really the board you kind of want. And we do see the Quixel Stone come down now.
And discards the Melina. as well, interestingly, choosing not to play it. I suppose would have
Yeah,
given the chance for Z to play another creature if he put that
yeah.
down.
You want to keep it in a situation where you can keep stunning their creatures with the stunner.
Exactly. So I think now, presumably, trying to decide what to put the stunner on.
And this is always an interesting choice. Do you load up the upgrades on a slightly bigger creature that's going to be harder to kill, or do you spread them around? I'd have gone with this, put it on the alley,
Mm-hmm.
because I think you want the Chan alive more.
Yeah,
So
I
you put it on
think
a creature that's slightly worse. So if they want rid of the stunner, they have to spend time killing the alley instead of the Chan.
interesting stuns to Collector Worm. I think I would have been tempted actually to put the damage from the Chance Blaster on the Collector Worm and then use the Hapsis to destroy the Collector Worm. Would have been my choice, and then stun the Muruk the Marked. Um,
Yeah, but if you take something out, then they can play creatures again.
it's true. It's true.
I think you just rather avoid that.
He is now on to 6 Ember as well. So it puts damage on the Prince Derek. Which just means, yeah, if it wants to fight, say, the Chan or the Engineer, the Prince Derek now dies. It can't take out one of those and live.
Yeah, and the sanitation engineer is doing a lot of work here.
Mm.
Just
Discards
cycling
Fidget.
through, getting rid of a lot of the shadows.
Yeah.
Uh,
So Miasma to stop the Forge. Oubliettes to navigate Alley. And we see a rigged lottery here. So oh, unlucky for Z, he doesn't get any Ember off the rigged lottery, but Ugluk gets one.
oof, that's not what you want to be seeing.
Not at all. You hate to see it, you really do. So I think we might see maybe see logos here. I feel like the shadows turn isn't that strong. No, we do see the shadows. Ah, the archive. Okay, that's what we didn't see. So it's the spike trap down.
Hit the inky gloom
No,
to stop any reaping.
reaping. Okay, I was going to ask, is the Inky Gloom the reaping or the fighting one? I always get the two mixed up. But it's the Dusk Runner on the Chan. So loading up the artifacts, contrary to what we saw earlier, where he was going to spreading them out between the alley and the Chan.
I'd be very surprised if that Chan lives another turn.
And discards the Hugger Mugger and the Vinder, just wants to not let Z play any more creatures.
Yeah. But Breaker Hill, worth it, I think, because you can steal one.
Very true. Would require quite a lot of commitment from the Sanctum creatures to get rid of it.
And this is where the Kixelstone affects Vivian in a way that we talked about earlier. That you've got the Ember control in hand to stop this key with your Bade, but it's hard for you to play it. You'd have to go through some shenanigans first.
You really would. I mean, what we may see, it may just see the when we see the Sanctum, I was going to say, what we may see here though is just run the Prince Derek into something, probably the Chan, and then that would allow you to play that Orbade. And then maybe play the Shield of Justice afterwards to take out, say, a Hapsis.
No, I think you fight with the Maruk before you play the Shield of Justice because you want to capture one.
It's very true, very true. I suppose, yeah, and you could fight, say, the Breaker Hill with the Gatekeeper and the Maruk to capture one, and maybe then just play the Shield just for the Ember if you wanted.
Yeah.
But that still all leaves Ugluk still on... Oh, no, it doesn't leave him on check if the Maruk captures one, actually. So clearly just thinking through the order here, Z, I think this is, as just you could hear from our discussion there's quite a lot of angles that needs to be considered with the Shield of Justice, with the Maruk, with the Orbade, in terms of what order you want to do these things in.
And this is, I think, the only turn in the game where either player has even slightly hesitated.
Exactly. So
it's been exceptionally zippy, mostly.
Yeah, let's see if we were correct about the Commander Champion. What we were. Oh, but the only problem with that is he still can't play another creature here because he's now still got more creatures.
Yeah, so it doesn't stop the key.
Doesn't stop the key, and he's going to discard the Orbade and the Shield of Justice. I think this is the other problem here, is that you can see what Z is discarding if you're Ugluk, and you can see now, okay, one of the Orbades is gone. He's not got as much Ember control. You know, I maybe don't need to go to kind of like 8 or 9, I can maybe take turns. I can sit on 6, and it's less of an issue. Especially when you've got stuff like in hand here, you've got this Logos hand where maybe you just need to play the Thorium Plasmate and the Wild Wormhole and reap twice, rather than say playing the Keylock to go to 7 where you think the Orb is a possibility.
Yeah, so you get to 6 here, and then possibly make them play Sanctum again.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're Z here, you're going to be eyeing up that Key Abduction.
You would be, but I think if you play Key Abduction, if depending if Ugluk's on 6.
I just meant in terms of like ending out the game.
Ah,
Like, okay,
right, yeah.
I'm pushing for key 3. I've got a Key Abduction in hand. How much work do I want to put in to set this up?
I think I just don't know if you're going to be able to get a Key Abduction off though. It's what, plus a 9, so you need 9.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be hard.
You need a lot of cards in hand.
Ugluk gonna go to check here. Try and close out the game.
He's indeed so plays the Wild Wormhole to play a Logos Plant.
Not bad. We've got 2 Logos creatures on the board.
Not bad at all. And then the Thorium Plasmate, maybe just move the Gatekeeper, get a bit of damage on that. Discards Universal Keylock. Makes sense. Doesn't want to knock himself off check. That'd be silly. And yeah, the Gatekeeper gets a bit of damage on that. Makes sense. A wow there from Z.
Just Ember Control coming thick and fast. The deck doing what we thought it might.
Yeah, and has to play Sanctum here. Plays the Barrister. Can't play the Barrister Destroyer. Yeah, and concedes. I think just realised that he can get an Ember on Maruk, but then what happens after that turn? You've got to think that Z that Ugluk can just reap again, and at that point, there's no.
I'd have maybe continued for the very outside chance of a Key Abduction, but
he's.
I don't think it happens, right? But I just am always slightly optimistic.
I mean, if we look at it, you could reap once with the fixed finger to get you.
Yeah, to... it's probably not possible, but it's just something that I would do. Doesn't matter.
No, that's very fair.
And there we have it in 2 games.
Yeah, in 2 games. Very fast games as well. As I say, Keyforge played at a breakneck speed.
Love it.
But just a very interesting game. I think this is kind of one of the wonderful things about Keyforge is that you can have, very long, drawn-out games, as we've seen in some of our other commentaries, would say, like the Heart of the Forest game, where you're going to time. And you have, this game took place in less time than the entire 3rd game of one of our other commentaries took. We've seen an entire matchup go past.
Get 35 minutes for a Keyforge game, and this was what, 20 odd?
Yeah, 27, I believe. So, the first game just went through very quickly. The second game had a bit more back and forth to it, but
I think it just shows from experience playing the decks. They know what to do. They know how it works.
Mm-hmm.
You're able to make those decisions very quickly.
Yeah, and I think especially with the Quixelstone was down in the first game, it almost made the decisions easier because you knew that you were like, well, I can't play creatures, so I don't have to consider that. I just need to consider whether I didn't want to keep or discard these creatures, and then what order I want to play my actions in, and that can kind of speed up the game as opposed to sometimes when you've got to consider, okay, I've got 4 creatures on the board. I need to work out what order I fight in. I need to work out what order I play actions in conjunction with those fighting. It kind of cleans up the game a bit with that Quixelstone.
I will ask you this: do you still hate Quixelstone, or
with a passion?
Burning passion of 1,000 suns.
Yeah, it's like I say though, it's difficult because as you've seen from my previous commentaries, I like to play very creature-based, very board-based decks. I like seeing creatures fight. I like seeing creatures use kind of reap effects, fight effects. I like seeing my creatures do things, and when you play a Quixelstone, it just means one of 2 things happens. Either I have artifact control and I have to dig through my deck to find that so I can actually start playing the game I want to play, or I just have to accept, okay, I'm now playing a game that I'm probably really disadvantaged in because of the nature of a good Quixelstone deck and the nature of my decks. And I think that's the thing. I just tend to have very negative kind of play experiences against Quixelstone decks, which is why I'm not a fan of them. But I don't. It's not. I think this is the difference between, like, say, this and Heart of the Forest. Is that I'm fine with Quicksilver existing. I think it's a really cool and interesting card. I, I'm really. I think this was a really interesting game in, like, seeing the effect Quicksilver can have. I
Yeah,
just
and I think
personally dislike it because it doesn't mesh well with my playstyle.
yeah, and I think both of these players played the Stone game very well, both in terms of Ugluk's choice of deck, which 21 actions, lots of pips, that's kind of what you want with the Stone,
Mm.
but also knowing exactly when to set it up and which creatures to keep on the board. Because they discarded it the first time, thinking that now was not the time.
Mm.
And then the second time, it's like, okay, this is a more favorable board for me than for them, so we're going to freeze the board at this point.
Yeah, and I think it's in combination with the ability to stun the collector worm at that point. I think that was very
Yeah,
crucial, in that you knew that you could kind of freeze the board state in that situation whereby, you know, the things that they couldn't fight with things in a way where they could modify the number of creatures. So we saw the Prince Derek fight the Commander Chan and didn't affect it. Still couldn't play down his Orbade, um, and still allowed Ugluk to force. I think
yeah.
that was a very clever play there.
Perhaps a misplay, and you could have run it into the Hapsis, and the number of creatures would have stayed the same. But then the Chan lives with the Stunner on it, which is probably just as
And it also had
bad.
a
So
Dusk Runner on it at that point, I believe, as
and a
well.
Dusk Runner. So yeah, it's probably swings and roundabouts.
Very much so. But yeah.
Oh, sorry, I should say for any non-British people, swings and roundabouts is a phrase meaning it's approximately even one way or the other.
Mm. Is that a very uniquely British face? I suppose
Uh, it
roundabouts, yeah.
it is. I've run into this many times teaching where I do, where I'll say something to a mostly international audience of students, and I will be left with blank stares.
Okay, so we don't have
It's
we don't have a word of the day today, but we do have a phrase of the day, which is swings and roundabouts.
fair enough. Fair enough.
Okay, well, thank you very much for listening. I've been David Baramon Fabulous Lark,
And I've been Callum, the good Doctor Young.
and we hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Team Screech Bomb Commentaries, and I'll bid you farewell.